When we talk about the idea of being the nice girl, we're not talking about genuine kindness, compassion, or warmth. Those are powerful human qualities that build connection and trust. What we are really examining is a pattern of behavior that goes deeper, a learned reflex to please, to comply, to avoid friction at the expense of one's own voice. Many women are conditioned into this role from an early age. They learn, often subtly, that being agreeable earns approval. That saying yes maintains harmony, and that swallowing discomfort is the price for being seen as good, lovable, or safe. Over time, this becomes less of a choice and more of a survival strategy, a silent contract where their worth is measured by how little they disturb the waters. The cost of that contract is rarely obvious at first. On the surface, it looks like peace, cooperation, or even strength, the ability to endure and accommodate. But beneath that, something begins to erode. The unspoken resentment of all the times they said yes when their whole being whispered no. The exhaustion of carrying relationships where the emotional weight is never truly shared. The slow fading of one's authentic desires, replaced instead by an endless calculation. What will keep me accepted? What will make them happy with me? What will avoid the conflict I fear? This isn't kindness. It's self-abandonment disguised as virtue. Psychologically, this pattern operates like a loop. The more you please, the more others expect it. The more they expect it, the harder it feels to set boundaries without guilt or backlash. And so the loop tightens, often leaving a woman feeling invisible within her own life, praised for being agreeable while her own needs collect dust in the corners of her existence. Philosophically, it raises a deeper question. What is the worth of kindness if it is always coursed by fear of rejection? If every act of generosity comes at the cost of inner truth, is it still truly generous? Or is it a subtle form of self-erasure? Breaking out of this pattern does not begin with anger or defiance. It begins with awareness. It begins with recognizing that constantly seeking approval is not the same as creating authentic connection. It begins with the radical act of asking, what do I actually want? And listening long enough for an answer that may have been silenced for years. This is not about rejecting kindness. It is about reclaiming the right to give it freely rather than as a debt. Every person in this room knows what it feels like to suppress a truth just to keep the room calm, to say yes while something inside tightens, to laugh along when what you really wanted was to speak up. And every time that happens, a small part of you steps back, waiting for the day you will finally come forward again. That's the quiet cost of being the nice girl. It doesn't ask for your anger. It asks for your silence. And if you give it long enough, you may forget the sound of your own voice. But you are not required to live there. The first step is to see the bargain clearly. What you trade away for the comfort of others is often far more precious than the comfort you receive in return. And once you see that, even once, it becomes harder to go back to playing that role unconsciously. The question then becomes not, how do I keep everyone happy? But rather, how do I remain true to myself even when it disrupts the script? Because here is the truth. No amount of niceness can ever earn you real respect. Respect is born when people meet your authenticity, not your compliance. And every time you choose your truth over your performance, You remind yourself that you are not here to be endlessly agreeable. You are here to be real. And if that unsettles a few people, let it. Their comfort was never worth your disappearance. There comes a moment, sometimes quiet, sometimes catalyzed by a sharp experience, when the need to be liked starts to feel like a cage rather than a calling. This is the turning point where a woman begins to see that constant approval is not the same as real connection, and that harmony built on self-denial is a fragile, often costly illusion. The shift from approval to authenticity is rarely dramatic on the outside, but it is profoundly radical within. It is the point where she starts to weigh the cost of being liked against the cost of being honest, and realizes one is slowly suffocating her. This shift begins with an inner reckoning. Whose voice have I been living for? It is uncomfortable at first because approval is a powerful drug. It rewards you quickly. It makes you feel safe. It reassures you that you belong. To step away from it, even slightly, can feel like standing in an open field without shelter. The old pattern whispers, stay quiet, stay agreeable, stay small. It's safer there. But safety without truth is a form of exile. It is living among people while quietly disappearing from yourself. Psychologically, the transition is about reclaiming agency. The sense that your voice, your time, your emotions are your own to direct. And this is not about swinging to the opposite extreme. Authenticity is not the rejection of kindness. It is the refusal to counterfeit it. It does not mean becoming harsh or cold, but it does mean becoming clear. It means learning to say no when everything in your old conditioning tells you that no will make someone upset. It means practicing honesty not as an act of rebellion, but as an act of alignment. What is often misunderstood is that this process is not only about changing how you speak to others, but how you speak to yourself. The nice girl learns early to narrate her worth through others' eyes. Authenticity demands you rewrite that script from the inside. It is asking, if no one clapped, if no one praised me, if no one approved, would I still make this choice? That question, repeated enough times, begins to erode the hold that external validation has over you. And yes, it comes with discomfort. There will be moments where the silence after you've spoken your truth feels louder than the applause you used to get for compliance. There will be moments where people interpret your boundaries as hostility because they were used to the version of you that always bent first. But what grows in that discomfort is something that approval could never give you: respect, both from others and perhaps more importantly from yourself. Philosophically, this is a shift from living as a reflection to living as a presence. Approval makes you a mirror. You show others what they want to see. Authenticity makes you a window, transparent, clear, unfiltered. Not everyone will like the view, and that is precisely the point. Their liking was never the measure of your worth, only the measure of their comfort. In time, this shift does not harden you, it liberates you. The woman who once said yes to everything begins to say yes only to what aligns with her values, her needs, her truth. She does not lose her ability to care. She simply stops outsourcing her identity to the moods of the room. And what she finds, often to her own surprise, is that the connections that survive this shift are deeper, sturdier, and infinitely more real. Because approval is borrowed, but authenticity is owned. And once you start living from that place, you stop asking, will they like me if I do this? and start asking, will I like who I become if I don't? Once you begin to step away from the role of the nice girl, the world around you does not always applaud. In fact, this is often the part that takes people by surprise. The reactions you will encounter when you start to show up differently. For years, you may have trained others without realizing it to expect your compliance, your softness, your willingness to carry the weight of harmony no matter how heavy it became for you. So when that pattern begins to change, when you start saying no where you once said yes, when you stop cushioning everyone else's comfort at the expense of your own, you are not only shifting your behavior, you are disrupting a dynamic that others have grown accustomed to. Some will respond with confusion. They will say things like, "You've changed," as though change is a betrayal rather than a sign of growth. Others may push back harder through criticism, coldness, or withdrawal, because your new boundaries reveal the imbalance they once benefited from. It's not that they always intend harm. It's that your transformation forces them to confront their own expectations, their own dependence on your silence or your endless accommodation. And that can feel to them like a loss of control. Psychologically, this is a crucial phase because it tests your resolve. It asks, are you willing to endure temporary discomfort for the sake of long-term self-respect? Or will you collapse back into old patterns to soothe the unease of others? The reactions you face, whether they are subtle guilt trips or overt resistance, are not proof that you are doing something wrong. They are often proof that you are finally doing something different. Human systems, whether families, friendships, or workplaces, resist change because change disrupts predictability. When you alter your role, the whole pattern trembles. But here is where the paradox lies. The relationships that are real, the ones built on mutual respect rather than dependency, tend to survive this shaking. They may wobble. They may need to be recalibrated. But the people who truly value you will learn to meet the authentic version of you, even if it takes time. And the ones who don't, those who only thrived when you were silent, compliant, or endlessly giving, may drift or fall away. That loss hurts. Yes, but it is also a kind of liberation because it clears the space for something truer to grow. Philosophically, this moment of friction exposes the nature of respect itself. Respect is not granted because you kept the peace. It is cultivated when you show the courage to hold your own ground. Those who respect only your compliance never truly respected you. They respected their comfort in your presence. There is a difference. And it becomes strikingly clear when you start to live differently. This is not about creating conflict for the sake of conflict. It's about refusing to live in a state of quiet resentment just to maintain appearances. And yes, it can be lonely at first. It can feel as though the whole world preferred the mask you wore to the face you now reveal. But over time, that loneliness transforms into a deeper kind of belonging, one rooted not in performance, but in truth. Because the reactions you will encounter are not just about their discomfort, they are also about your emergence. They are the echoes of an old script being rewritten. And echoes are always loudest when the walls are first struck. Keep going. Let them echo. Let them adjust. Because the ones meant to walk with you on this next stretch of the road will not need your silence to stay beside you. What emerges on the other side of this shift is something far more profound than many expect. When you stop being the nice girl, when you step out of that constant loop of appeasement and approval, you begin to touch a strength that was always there, only buried under years of over-accommodation. This is not the loud, performative kind of strength that tries to dominate or prove itself. It is quieter, steadier, rooted in the simple truth that you no longer need to trade pieces of yourself to feel worthy of connection. True strength is not about how much you can tolerate. It is about how clearly you can stand in your truth without needing to convince anyone of it. It is the ability to let discomfort exist in a room without rushing to dissolve it with your own boundaries. This strength often feels unfamiliar at first because for so long, strength was equated with enduring, with carrying more than your share, with swallowing your words for the sake of the moment. Now it takes on a new form discernment. You learn that not every request deserves your yes. Not every opinion deserves your energy. Not every relationship deserves unearned access to your time, your heart, or your peace. And with that discernment comes a remarkable kind of freedom, because when your actions are no longer driven by the fear of losing approval, they begin to align more naturally with your actual values. You stop over-explaining your boundaries. You stop negotiating your worth in rooms that have already shown you they cannot hold it. You begin to say yes with your whole self because it is a choice, not a performance. This is where you start to reclaim time, space, and emotional bandwidth for the things that nourish you instead of drain you. Psychologically, this freedom is a return to self-trust. It is remembering that you are capable of making decisions that honor you, even if they upset someone else's expectations. And with that self-trust comes resilience, the kind that does not avoid conflict, but also does not create it unnecessarily. You realize that some doors will close, some people will leave, some labels may even follow you for a time. But the price of that is far less than the cost of living as a permanent extension of someone else's comfort. Philosophically, this is the moment when kindness becomes what it was always meant to be, a gift, not a transaction. You stop giving from depletion and start giving from choice. Your yes carries weight again because it is no longer automatic. Your presence begins to feel different, firmer, more grounded, not because you care less, but because you finally care in a way that includes yourself. And here is the unexpected outcomes. When you live this way, you attract a different quality of connection. People sense when your kindness is laced with resentment, just as they sense when it is born of freedom. Those who are aligned with this new version of you will not be threatened by your boundaries. They will be drawn to your clarity. They will meet you at that level because they too are tired of counterfeit harmony. So what happens when you stop being the nice girl? You don't become less loving, you become more real. And in a world that is often too loud with performance and too quiet with truth, that is the kind of presence that leaves a mark. The question is no longer, how do I keep everyone else comfortable? The question becomes, what kind of life can I build when my kindness is no longer a mask, but a choice?